Can everybody sit down, please, so we could start this presentation? Thank you very much. On behalf of Secretary from MassDOT, I want to welcome everybody to this presentation tonight. My name is Jim Eng. I am the Deputy Administrator of the Rail Division at MassDOT. This is the third presentation of 6 we're doing. And we've been in New Bedford and we were in Taunton this week. And at every single one of these presentations, we learned something new. And we learned to adjust our presentation, and by adjusting it, we're going to give you more information that you need to gather so that you can give us better comments. Tonight, our goal is this, is that we're going to update you on the Stoughton Electric, which is the preferred route, and then also we're going to talk to you about the new Middleborough option. Since the last 2 presentations, we've added some slides to clarify the environmental process. It's a process that's lengthy, and so we wanted to make sure you understand the process. The second thing I want to mention to you is the newspapers have been putting out information the last few days after the last 2 presentations that the new Middleborough option costs $300 million and it's going to take 5 years to implement. I don't know where that came from. The paper said it came from DOT. Well, it didn't come from DOT. We wish that the newspapers and the public get their information directly from us so that we can be clear on what the schedule is and what the cost of the new Middleborough option is. We haven't even completed our groundwork yet on that option. We have people out there doing wetland delineation, surveying, and other design efforts to make sure that we come up with the right number. And so please bear with us until we finish that portion. Like I said, this is the 3rd presentation. We'll be in Easton, Canton, and Middleborough if you'd like to join us. But all of our presentations have been consistent, and it's telling the same story. So we're going to tell you that story tonight. All right? Thank you very much. Nancy?
Good evening. My name is Nancy Farrell, and I'm a member of the project team. And my job tonight is to moderate the meeting so that we have a productive and efficient meeting. And the way we do that is, first of all, to ask you to hold your questions through the presentation so that everyone has the same amount of information. And when we get to the discussion portion, you can make your comments based on the information you've heard here this evening. When we get to that part of the meeting, I will ask if there are any elected officials who would like to speak first. And you're kind of fortunate because there aren't too many tonight. They're great, but there aren't too many of them. So that means you'll get to jump in a little sooner. I would like to introduce the members of the team who are here. You heard from Jim. Jean Fox is here. Jean is a MassDOT project manager. Kim Dobos is the MBTA project manager. Rick Carey from VHB will be doing most of the presentation this evening, and Rick is the manager for VHB, and Mike Stoffel is here from HNTB. We also have Charlie Passanisi over there, who's working on the boards, who's meeting folks about the boards, and Rachel Burkhardt from the owner's representative, Parsons Sminkrohoff. So let's see. I do ask everyone, when you get up to speak, try to limit the length of your remarks. You are welcome to submit written remarks. You can email us. You can write us a letter. Whatever you say tonight will be included in a summary we're going to do at the end of the 6 meetings. And that summary will be posted online, and it will categorize all all the remarks, who said what their opinions were, and try to answer any questions that have come up. We're early days yet, but we do certainly want to have as much information from the public before we get too far down the road. And you see the rules. I'm sure everybody here is just going to be very friendly. So Jean is going to talk us through the history of the project, and then Rick will talk about the engineering and travel issues that we're going to describe to you tonight. So thanks so much for coming.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's so great to see you all here. So many great familiar faces have listened to me more than you ever wanted to. So here's just another iteration. A lot of you already know how we got to where we are today. We went through an environmental review process that was long and comprehensive, but ended up getting us to the Stoughton Electric route as the preferred alternative, otherwise known as the LEDPA. So my job here is actually the easy part. Rick has the more challenging part to explain some more technical features of Stoughton and to go on with the discussion of the new Middleborough option. So everybody knows we've been touting the benefits of this, and we continue to say, you know, the Stoughton route electric was definitely the fastest route. It was very convenient with the stations that we put out there. Clearly huge reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Access to affordable housing. One of the things that we hear when we go to Boston and the suburbs is, gee, it would be really nice if we had that link because, you know, you guys have great housing stock and people can afford it. And we do. Then there's also a wonderful freight infrastructure down here already that Mass Coastal operates on, and we've already done some upgrades to that, but having additional work done would benefit and allow that industry to expand. So certainly there are economic benefits, businesses, job creation, household income all come with having the link in the region. And then we did a lot through technical assistance and a lot more going forward as the project advances. Station area development potential. So we did a lot of the communities in Fall River included, did some transit-oriented development work with SERPED and really looked at how you're going to develop your areas around the stations to help bring people in, improve your real estate values, and create some more local taxes that help your city thrive. And I just informed that the mayor is here, and I'd love to have you come up for a moment. And all right, I'll get through the next slide. So basically, when we're talking Stoughton Electric, we're talking about extending service, which currently ends in Stoughton, south through Taunton, and then branching off in the so-called Southern Triangle to the cities of Fall River and New Bedford. We have 10 communities that are served, and they're all listed up there. The ones that have the little X next to them or plus sign already have commuter rail service, so Canton, Stoughton, and Lakeville. And here's the details, the nitty-gritty of what South Coast Rail Stoughton Electric looks like. 52 miles of track, 45 crossings, 30 railroad bridges, 6 highway bridges, a signal system that includes now mandated positive train control, and it would be the only and first electrified system in the Commonwealth. So that involves the traction power and the overhead wires, otherwise known as catenary. That's part of our plan as well with the Stoughton Electric. Our proposed service was 40 trips. So right now there are 28 that come from or serve Stoughton, but we would do 20 to Fall River and 20 to New Bedford, all through Taunton. And we estimated back in the day that it would take about 77 minutes to go from New Bedford to South Station and 75 Fall River to South Station. Remembering with an electric train, you can slow down and take off faster. So you remove some time that way. We also projected back in 2012 daily ridership of 4,570, which isn't too bad to launch a train. Next, okay, so here are the station details for you. The ones that are in blue are side platform stations, and I'll show you some graphics of that, and the ones that are in green are center platform. So we also show you here the list of new stations as well as the 2 that would be reconstructed, and we show you the parking, and you'll notice that 2 have 0 parking. That would be right here in Fall River at Battleship Cove, and the other would be Easton Village. Those are kiss and rides. And with that, I think I'll invite the mayor up. Are you ready? And then we'll continue. is Mayor Correa. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Okay. How's everybody doing this evening? Good? Okay. Well, this is very exciting. Welcome to the City of Fall River. Welcome to Bristol Community College. Thank you. I'm very pleased to see that almost all the seats are filled up, and it's only 10 past 6:30, so we're very excited about that. I'm sure some more people will filter in. We've got some excellent media presence, which is great. Former Mayor Scott Lang, thanks for being here from New Bedford. Thank you for your support on this project. I'm very excited about this. This is something that I was looking forward to speaking about for a number of weeks leading up to tonight's meeting. This is the single most important economic development, housing, education, and probably drug abuse fixer for the entire city of Fall River. All those issues are completely connected. And over the last several weeks and several months, I've been speaking to a lot of different people in Boston, a lot of different people in the region, and this is so vitally important because the Middleborough route, which I'm supporting, and our delegation is supporting, has come out to support as the first delegation and mayor, as well as local municipal government, has come out first and foremost, ahead of everything, I think, to say, yes, we are supporting the Middleborough route. I think it's a real project and it's essential. I'm going to talk about why. But seriously, this is a big deal. It's a big deal for Fall River, it's a big deal for the South Coast, and it's a big deal for the state. So I want to start with, to be quite frank, I find it really crazy and almost absurd that two of the major cities in Massachusetts, New Bedford and Fall River, do not have rail access. That in itself is just crazy. I mean, I think if you studied at any urban planning institution in the country, they would say that that is just crazy, especially with a hub like Boston, one of the most intelligent hubs in the world, right, where there's so much activity flourishing with education and opportunity. And you have an unbelievable city like Fall River, New Bedford. I will speak obviously from Fall River's perspective, but that we don't have rail access, I think that's crazy. So that's the first point. I think it's absolutely insane that we don't have rail access, and that's why we need to get rail access, and that's why I need all of your help, as well as our state delegation, the governor's help, and the entire state of Massachusetts' help to make this project happen. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the fact that, we've been talking about South Coast Rail since before I was born, right? I'm the youngest mayor of a major city in the United States, and I go to mayor's conferences, and I'm on my way to a conference next week on urban planning, and one of the topics I'll be talking about is transportation, and rail transportation in particular. And when I was briefed on this as I was a city councilor and as I became mayor, I looked at these two routes, and I'm talking to the audience, I'm talking to you, both you all here, and it became very clear to me that Stoughton route, which had been planned for 30 plus years, since before I was born, is not even an option. I don't know how you feel, but when I look at the facts, it doesn't look realistic. It doesn't look possible. When you have a project that started at $300 million and today is $3.4 billion, 111 land takings, I think it was, you have to go through a swamp, there's environmental. Let's say we even decided we were going to go with Stoughton route. Forget it. I mean, it'll be another 30 years. I won't even be mayor. I'll probably be, a grandfather, by that time. And I don't have children yet, so I have to get to that stage first. So that's not possible. That's not realistic. So it's not going to be my strategy to talk about whether I want Stoughton or whether I want Middleborough. Middleborough is the only route I see as the possible way to get rail to the South Coast. It's the quickest way. It's the most cost-effective way. And I think it's real. I think we've been tricked and talked about, and it's been like this 30-year thing that we're going to have rail. And when you look at the facts, it literally does not seem feasible to come up with a Stoughton route that makes sense for the state. So I can't sit here and tell you that I'm going to be in favor of Stoughton. It's Stoughton, right? It says
Yes,
Stoughton. But I can tell you I'm in favor of Middleborough. I can tell you that our state delegation is behind that. So that's really important. That's point number two. So just to recap, point one is that it's absolutely crazy that two metropolitan areas, two major cities in Massachusetts does not have rail access to our hub. And number two, that the Middleborough route is, in my opinion, the only option. So third, why? Why is it so vital that we get this project done in 5 years? I'm talking finished, built, up and running. I want to be able to take a train from Fall River to Boston. Why? Because when I go up there, I was up there last week talking to the Federal Reserve. I had a talk to give at the Federal Reserve, and it took me 2.5 hours. to get to Boston. 2.5 hours. And if I didn't leave before 3 o'clock, which I didn't make it because the speech went a little bit over time, which hopefully won't go tonight, I said, you know what, I'm just gonna get dinner in Boston and just wait it out, because it would take me another 3 hours to get back to Fall River, and that's just crazy. So talk about the environmental impacts, talk about all those other issues. You know, the possibility of rail and the likelihood of it happening has to be real, and it has to happen because there's so many benefits. What are the benefits? Well, number one, I'll start with environment. As I was walking in, I heard something about the environment with diesel. I'm not thrilled about diesel because I do like clean energy, I like clean technology. But at the same time, we have to take into account the amount of fuel savings, the amount of gas emissions from cars idling in traffic on the way to Boston, the amount of cars we can take off the road by getting a rail route from Fall River up to Boston, as well as New Bedford and Taunton and the entire South Coast. So I think that has to be factored in. So I'm willing to take that risk to do diesel trains. And I think the demand is going to be so high, and I'm going to get to that, of why the demand will be so high in the near future. But I think the demand will be so high that eventually you might see electrification at some point on this route, or maybe another route later on, but definitely this route for now. So that's the first point in terms of why it needs to happen. There is an positive environmental impact. Secondly, the economic impact. I don't think anybody in this room, I don't think anybody in the state will tell you that there's not an economic impact, a positive economic impact, when a train is added, a train route, a train connection to a major hub like Boston is. And if you look at the corridor, do we have a map? Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Okay. If you look at that 24 corridor all the way down to Fall River and New Bedford, I'm telling you right now, there is not another city, sorry, Mayor Lang, but there's not another city on 24 that is like Fall River, that has the affordable housing, and I'll talk about housing in a little bit, but that has the waterfront, that has the amenities that Fall River can offer, the beautiful historic homes, the new market rate apartments we have coming online on our waterfront and some of our mills, the great homes we have and throughout the entire city, the great businesses, the Portuguese food, the manufacturing opportunities, all kinds of job opportunities. So it's not just job opportunities in Boston that we're seeking connection for, it's job opportunities from Boston to here that we're seeking as well. But I think there's something else that separates Fall River from any other city in the entire state of Massachusetts. And unfortunately, I don't think this map shows it, but it's our proximity to another state. That is critical. The proximity that Fall River has to Rhode Island is probably the biggest thing Fall River can offer our state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Why? We are 25 minutes from Providence, Rhode Island. That's on a bad day. It's not even on a good day. We're 35 minutes from TF Green, an international airport. We are surrounded, essentially, by Tiverton, Rhode Island, which is a gateway to Newport. And that's critically important. Fall River is already expert. I know we have Lynn from the Office of Economic Development. The Office of Economic Development are already experts at bringing Rhode Island companies to Fall River. Blount Seafood, the list goes on and on and on. I'm not going to sit here and name them all, but there's tons of companies that have moved to our state because of the incentives, because of the better business climate, and because, most importantly, our proximity to Rhode Island. They want a connection to Boston, right? Because right now I got to go to Providence to do that. They want a connection right here. So we can bring dollars, because I don't want to compete with New Bedford or Brockton or Taunton. We can bring new dollars from the state of Rhode Island into Massachusetts and grow our economy, can grow our biotech industry, can grow I think, our textile industry in Fall River. Our textile industry is still very strong. I did a CNN interview, and it's going to be airing in October, and they asked me, they said, oh, textiles are dead in Fall River. I said, no, they're not. We've got niche manufacturing, we've got high-end manufacturing, Matuk, good clothing, making 5,000 runs instead of 500,000, because companies that get a first chance with Nordstrom can't afford to do a 500,000 piece order in Bangladesh. They're making the 5,000 in Fall River, testing their product, and then going to market. We are the conduit. Tech and textile is something I talk about all the time. You have the greatest minds in Boston, at MIT and Harvard, working on fabrics that are testing people's sweat temperatures and heart rates. Those are going to be integrated into fabrics. Wearables, one of the biggest market opportunities in the country, in the world. That can be manufactured. The R&D can be done in Fall River. But we can't do it because there's no public transportation to Boston. So that MIT student can't get down to Fall River right now. And as you know, I don't have to tell you about millennials. I am a millennial. But I don't have to tell you, most of them don't want cars. They're using Ubers and Lyfts or friends, right? That's what they're doing. Well, that's expensive. It's $90 to get to Boston via Uber. That's not affordable. If I want to get to Boston right now, I got to take a Peter Pan bus if I wanted to take public transportation or a form of public transportation. That's not fair. That's not right. That doesn't grow our economy. So this is not just about growing Fall River's economy. This is about growing the Commonwealth's economy. And that's why this particular route, Middleborough, is so important. And like I started with saying, I don't even believe the Stoughton route is possible. So I'm asking you, and I think our community's asking you, I haven't heard everybody's voice, but I have been talking to people. Our community's asking you, go forward with the Middleborough route. Let's get it done in 5 years, and let's continue to grow the state's economic impact, and let's continue to grow this wonderful state that we live in, which I think is #1 in innovation in the entire country. We can continue to do that, and we can do that here in Fall River. So those are some of my highlights. I have a couple other things that I want to get into, but for now, I'll pause and take any questions. Good? No questions? Okay, a couple other points to, oh, thank you. I was waiting for that. Thank you. I was waiting for that. No, I'm just kidding. No, so just a couple of things that I want to recap that I think is really important. You look at the wait time, because I'm going to kind of go through some of the arguments I've heard, right? So I've heard about, well, it's second rate service, it's the wait times are increased, or the ridership time is increased. Well, again, I want to reiterate, right now when you drive to Boston during rush hour, you're sitting in traffic for 1.5 to 2 hours minimum. And you got to sit there like this, right? You got to pay attention. You can't be on your phone. Maybe you can listen to the radio. That's about it. You can't open up a laptop and start doing work. You really can't be on the phone. So it's terrible. Nobody wants to do that, right? So that's one I think, response to that argument. You have a train that, what's the projected time now, Gene? Through Middleborough? Yeah.
90 to 95 minutes.
90 minutes. So an hour and a half. An hour and a half, I know I'm going to get to my destination. I don't have the anxiety, right? Everybody in this room has felt anxiety when they're sitting in traffic, right? I know I do. I'm sure you all have too. You feel anxiety when you're sitting in traffic, inching, right? You're prone to accidents when you're sitting in traffic. You're wasting gas and mileage. You're sitting there and it's just not a good experience. If you're sitting in a train for the same amount of time that you'd be sitting, or less, in a car, right? You can open up your laptop, you can make a phone call, you can do all these other things while still saving the environment, saving time, and saving money. So that's my argument to the people that say, oh, well, it's too long. And the people that say it's too long, well, again, I go back to my first point. Stoughton doesn't seem real. So, we have to get past that, I think, first. And once I think we understand that the Stoughton route is not a real route, it's not going to happen, it's too expensive, it doesn't make sense, the state doesn't have a full funding mechanism, then I think we can have a serious conversation about Middleborough. But I think we need to end that debate, and I think we need to move forward with Middleborough. That's what I think needs to happen. So that's my response to the wait time. What other negatives have been promoted? I know there's a couple others.
The limited service.
Limited service. Okay, limited service. So what are we talking? We're talking 4 trains a day?
2 to Fall River, 2 to
2 different, yep, 2 and 2. Okay, so 2 and 2, both ways. What you were going to get 40 in a project that wasn't going to happen, or doesn't look like it's going to happen. So you're going to get 40, you're going to get nothing, or you're going to get 2. Right?
2 during the peak period.
During peak, yeah.
Right, during the peak periods, right. So if I need to get to Boston, it's not like 100,000 people are going to be riding this train every single day. We have to be realistic, right? We know that the number is going to be somewhere in the 5,000 person ridership, right? That's reasonable to get it started. You got to get your foot in the door, and then you can expand. But the economic impact of this, I'm telling you right now, our housing market is poised to boom. It is impossible, I promise you this, the Boston housing market, rental market, is going to pop. It is not sustainable to have a $3,500 to $4,000 rent for 1,400 to 1,500 square foot apartments. It's not feasible long term. And these people that are building, these big investors from out of the country in some cases and out of the state, have these huge loans on these properties and cannot go below a certain rent. Otherwise, they can't pay back their huge mortgages. Okay, so yes, you've seen incredible boom in South Boston and the seaport, great. Are those buildings full? No. Is there demand? Yes, but they're not full. Why? Because people can't afford them. So they're going to look for somewhere else to live. And another example, Providence. The market rent for a one-bedroom in downtown Providence is $2,200 a month for a one-bedroom. In Fall River on our waterfront, you have brand-new market-rate apartments coming online in Commonwealth Landing. They're going to be $1,500 at the top, the maximum, $1,500 for two bedrooms. Two bedrooms. You try and find a two-bedroom in Boston, in a mill, an old mill, with, 1,500 square feet, 1,600 square feet for $1,500 a month. It's not possible. So just by common sense, if we have that connection, you're going to give people an option that they don't currently have. And I'm going to tell you, on that 24 corridor, there's not another city on that 24 corridor like Fall River, with the amenities we have, with the proximity to Rhode Island, with the opportunities for cheap rent, for cheap office space, for wonderful waterfront, access to Newport, access to Providence, access to two major airports, 3 if you count New Bedford's airport, which is a major airport, they're international now as well, and access to Cape Cod. There's not another city like this. We are so proud and so happy to live in Fall River because we know the value of our city. Boston needs to see that too. And if you do, it's not just an economic impact and driver for the city of Fall River, it's one for the entire Commonwealth. It makes the Commonwealth stronger. So to go back to my first point, it's crazy that we don't have a train because we're part of Massachusetts. We're the 10th largest city in Massachusetts, 10th out of 351 towns and cities. And we don't have a public transportation option that's reliable to our capital city. And I can get to another capital city easier than I can get to Boston. That's crazy. Okay? So we need your help. The Middleborough route is the way to go, in my opinion. I think in the delegation, I know in the delegation's opinion, and we will do whatever it takes, whatever we need to do to help you make this project happen in 5 years, built, completed. Because I want to make sure that I can ride it, not my grandchildren. I want to be able to ride it to Boston. So with that, I'll stop there, and if there are any questions you have for me, and are we taking public questions or questions from the?
No, we're just going to go through the...
Okay. Do you have any questions for me? Because I might not be able to stay the entire time.
I have a comment.
Sure, I guess. I'm not running this meeting, so I don't want to.
My name is David Lima. I live in Westport, but I'm in love with Fall River.
Great.
I lived in Western Mass for 30 years, and I worked in Boston. And you're missing a huge piece, all your litany of things that you said. It's a positive that you're not attending to. There are people like myself, baby boomers, retired, and this is a home run. You're on the water in Massachusetts. You can go from Florida to Maine. You can't find a place like this.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot find it like this. Forget Boston. We don't need Boston. We need to think about ourselves and developing the structure, because Boston doesn't care about us. I worked there for years as a lawyer. Okay? So it's fine to get a train up there. Most people can't figure out how to get out of there. They've been working on it for 50 years. Good luck to them. But I'm telling you, you need to focus as much on the positives, the boomers, the rest of the country, looking for places to live reasonably well. And this is one of them. For all the reasons you just said, from Providence to New England, and sitting here, and my only caveat to you would be this, that when they come, because I go to Florida for 5 months, and I see what money does when they turn and they take, oh, look at this nice place over there in Fall River. Be prepared.
Oh, we're ready.
I don't know if you are. I really, with all due respect, I don't think you have any clue. I've been in Florida the last 10 years, watching what goes on with people with money, big money. And if this opens up and people decide to come down here, just be prepared.
Thank you.
I worked at the BRA for years.
Excellent.
I'm just telling you. So there's a lot of pluses, but a lot of caveats that come along with trying to make this happen. But you have a gold mine here. But for not just the reasons you said, for other people to figure out where they're going to go next.
Great.
This is the place to go.
Open arms. Ready to accept them. Thank you. That was great. But do you have any questions for me, any of you? Not
No,
audience,
we're good.
these questions.
We're good.
Well, thank you. My office is available
We know where
to
to
answer.
find you.
You do know where to find me, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Yeah, so I live that dream every day, too, with our delegation, that lovely drive we have on 24 with the white knuckles. It isn't fun at all. So we're back on Stoughton Electric. We're just going to wrap this up, a few more slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rick Carey with VHB, who's lived his entire professional life on South Coast Rail. Next. I did promise you a couple of views of platforms. Here's a typical side platform. So you see canopies, platform, 800 foot. We have ramps and stairs, and then places for bike racks and benches and signage, surface parking. And then a center island has a little bit more. It has a ramp and an elevator. It has the high-level platform. The high level, by the way, you all will remember, is because you need to be able to get on and off every car, whether you have a stroller, a wheelchair, or anything else. So they don't limit you to one car. Anybody can get on and off. And then again, the same thing, the platform, parking lot lighting, pick-up, drop-off areas that we've actually scoped out pretty extensively to make it transition areas around the stations. Then for Stoughton, we also, and you're very familiar with this, Larry and I were talking about this, two overnight layover facilities. So this is where we park the trains at night. They don't run, they just kind of live there for a few hours until it's time to go again. And we had proposed Weaver's Cove here in Fall River, the east portion of it, and then Wamsutta at the Whales Tooth Station in New Bedford. They consist of 6 storage tracks, some crew quarters, not terribly large, parking for crew, and a storage shed for light equipment. That's essentially what it is. And they just live there at night. They don't, it's not a rail yard and the, what you're probably remembering from your youth. That's not what this is. So we do have, with the Stoughton Electric, what we call some complex structures that are going to require a lot more work and are potentially quite expensive. No, definitely. So there's the Main Street Bridge in Easton, and I think you've all heard, we've talked about the trestle through the Hockomock with the critter crossings underneath, and then the grade separator at Route 138 in Rainham. Those are big, big items that require a lot more work and are pricey pieces of the project. Then electrification. I mentioned that we would be the first and only so far. The Stoughton Electric route would be electrified. So it has to have new electric locomotives. It has to have traction power substations, overhead wires, the catenary. We have to either work with Amtrak or with the T for maintenance, and again, Amtrak, or new staff to do the overhead catenary maintenance, and then work with Amtrak on the Northeast Corridor as well. So there'd be some possible system upgrades there. That we've known about from the beginning, but these are things that we've had to consider as we advance the design to 15%. So overall, the corridor wide, we are at 15%, but south of Cotley South, we have advanced this portion of it to 30%. And Rick Carey from VHB is going to go into much more detail on this for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. I thought you were going to talk about my whole slide and steal my thunder, but so just to back up a little bit, since Gene mentioned the environmental impact statement, environmental impact report work that MassDOT, the MBTA, and the project team had done through 2012. Since that point, the program management team of VHB HNTB was hired in 2014. And so there's been a lot of activity on advancing the design of the project that's we've been doing. And the graphic kind of shows that we brought the entire project design level to the 15% design level, and then have been advancing the southern piece basically from Taunton South to the 30% design level. And what 30% design level means basically is we've established the location horizontally and vertically of what infrastructure will be going in, what the limits of grading and possible impact would be to that, determining what the wetland impacts would be, to the point where we can develop notice of intent applications for the local conservation commissions, and then it would flex up to the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, to get the project permit. So that's where we are in the southern piece. The northern piece is still at the 15%. And in that process, we've also been advancing more current information on project cost and project schedule, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And in addition, we have been working with the local DEP on what's called a special project designation, as we've been testing soils along the corridor. Some of the soils have some contaminants, so the special project designation establishes a set of protocols that the MBTA and MassDOT will need to follow along with DEP on how we manage those soils during design and construction. So the environmental permitting process, this, as I mentioned, the environmental impact statement, that's work that's been going on over the last 5 or 6 years that brought us to the point where we are tonight. And that started, if some of you attended some of those public meetings, with up to 64 alternatives that were evaluated, that were really weeded down to 3, a bus alternative and 2 commuter rail alternatives, Stoughton Straight, both diesel and electric, and also what was called a Whitman variant, which was a little bypass in the city of Taunton. A number of environmental items were evaluated through that environmental impact statement. We work closely with DEP. We work closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, who is the lead federal agency on that environmental impact statement. And through all that analysis, we determined that the Army Corps determined that Stoughton Electric Straight was the preferred alternative, what they call the LETBA, the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative. And there was a number of criteria that went into that, including environmental impact. So from that LETBA, that's where the program management team, the MBTA, have been advancing design, and where there's a number of steps that are needed to get environmental permits needed to construct the project. This little graphic shows the multiple steps that are needed. We're at the first step right now, which is shaded in green. That's getting ready to work with the local conservation commissions and preparing notice of intent applications that identify the wetland impacts. That's where we are right now. We have 5 draft notice of intents for the southern communities I mentioned, and we're ready to submit those. And that's another opportunity for public involvement when it gets into the local conservation commissions. Those are public hearings, public meetings. Then there's multiple steps that are needed to get what's called wetland variances, and there's working with DEP to get those variances. When the amount of wetland impacts are greater than 5,000 square feet per community, you trigger those variances. We have to get water quality certifications, and then ultimately, and this is the ultimate permit at the bottom, is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 404 permit. And so all those steps are necessary to get that 404 permit, and that's needed for the Stoughton Straight project before any construction can happen. So that's an important detail to remember, that in order to start construction, we have to get that permit. So as we go through the presentation, keep that in mind. So it's a tricky trigger. So the next steps we have to take, like I said, is our first is to finalize what's called a programmatic agreement, and that establishes some protocols and steps we need to follow with the permitting process with the Army Corps and the historic evaluations that are needed to happen. We are getting into the wetland variance process, as I mentioned, get a record of decision from the Army Corps, and then get that 404 permit. So as I mentioned, over the last 2 years, as we've been advancing design, we've also been updating program schedule and program cost. And through the environmental impact statement era of developing the project, there was a projected 10-year schedule and $2.23 billion program that was as of 2012. As the project advanced, schedule risks were evaluated, more information is known as the design is advanced. Both the program management team and an independent cost estimator, the MBTA hired, did an evaluation of cost and schedule, and the results on that showed that it was actually longer duration, 14 years and $3.31 billion to construct the project. The independent cost estimator came up with 15 years and $3.4 billion program, and all this evaluation of the cost and schedule, should be noted that the MBTA's owner's representative Parsons PB, Parsons Brinkerhoff, oversaw that as well. So there were a number of eyes watching the development of this. And one of the bigger factors that drove that price was time and the escalation and inflation that goes along with that. So it was at this point, this data was presented to the Fiscal Management Control Board in June of this year. And as that was presented, that was sort of the flag of considering this Middleborough option as something to get a service up and running a little bit faster for a little less of an investment to get things going. So that's the mandate that's been put on MassDOT, the MBTA, and the program management team. So what is that Middleborough option that we're looking to investigate? And basically, it's utilizing the existing rail system of the Middleborough Secondary, which is shown in orange here, of connecting the southern communities of New Bedford, Fall River, and southern Taunton over to the existing Middleborough line, the old Colony line. So that's what we're looking at. This provides, as the mayor stated it well, it's a limited service. It's not a full, robust service that Stoughton Strait is. But the infrastructure along that Middleborough Secondary that we're starting to investigate now is a 7.5-mile stretch of rail track. There's 8 bridges along that stretch and 5 grade crossings. So right now in the capital improvement program, MassDOT had developed within the last several months that is a public document now was to do state of good repair improvements already on that stretch corridor. $22 million are identified in that CIP, and those dollars will go to state of good repair improvements, including tie replacement, new stone ballast along the track bed, bridge upgrades, culvert upgrades, and other improvements that the state is looking at right now. So that's in process as we speak, separate from South Coast Rail. The other aspect of Middleborough option, and this was an option that was vetted through the FEIR-EIS process and was eliminated. And there were a couple reasons that Middleborough route was eliminated. One, without major infrastructure improvements up in Quincy and Braintree, you had limited service that didn't meet the service delivery policy and to meet the project purpose and need. It didn't do that, so that was eliminated. To do the full service, major improvements were required up in Braintree and Quincy, which required a tunnel, a lot of money, and that was a reason that that alternative was eliminated and Stoughton Strait became the preferred alternative. So we're taking a new look at that of providing limited service to get something going a little bit quicker, a little less money, like I said, and that's what we're investigating now. And so over the next several months, we will be looking at different service alternatives, what that service would be, what the ridership projections for that limited service would be, other track infrastructure improvements, what the cost and schedule to deliver that would be, different station options, and to refine that environmental process. We have to work with DEP, the Army Corps of Engineers, on what that modification is going to be in the process we need to follow. Two things in order to, if this is chosen to move forward, 2 steps in order to do this. The first step, as I mentioned, there's state of good repair improvements that are being looked at right now by MassDOT independent of South Coast Rail. That's the first step. And those dollars are in the current capital program. The second step would be what it takes to build the Southern Triangle, basically from Taunton south. And this is an important fact that has been maybe miscommunicated a little bit in the newspapers. I want to make it clear. In order to do any construction on that Southern Triangle down in New Bedford and Fall River, following the Army Corps processes, we need to get that 404 permit for Stoughton Strait. That graphic I showed you earlier, there's a number of steps that you need to go through to get that. that permit has to be in hand before any construction can happen on the Southern Triangle. So those are steps that still need to happen before any construction begins. And those 4 steps labeled there is the same ones I mentioned earlier, which is getting the programmatic agreement finalized with the Corps, going through the wetland variance process with DEP, record of decision, then that 404 permit. So a couple of changes. What this would mean is the service would go from the Southern Triangle in southern Taunton and take a right on the Middleborough Secondary. So there's 2 stations proposed right now for Stoughton Strait and Taunton. One called the Taunton Depot, which is shown in green there. That's behind the Target Plaza. The other station is further north in the downtown area of Taunton. So in order to have this service to Middleborough work, this southern station, the Taunton Depot station, would have to be moved to the south side of Cotley Junction, that junction in the Middleborough Secondary, closer to where the Galleria Mall is, in order to have trains stop at that station before it takes the right to Middleborough. The other station challenge here is on the other end of the Middleborough Secondary, where the existing Middleborough Lakeville station exists. That's shown in yellow here at the bottom of the screen. And you can see that station is shown south of the junction. That's Pilgrim Junction. So trains coming from New Bedford and Fall River across the Middleborough Secondary would have to head south to the existing station, then do basically a turn back north, and there's a time penalty for that. Basically, that takes time away from the trip time from New Bedford and Fall River up to heading up to South Station. And the green arrows reflect that move from New Bedford Fall River to the existing station. The yellow is leaving that station, heading to South Station. The other option here is to look at alternatives to that existing Middleborough Lakeville station of putting either a new station north of the Y. That presents some challenges. There's quite a bit of development that's occurred around that existing station, a lot of residential properties and businesses down there, so that transit-oriented development could be impacted if that station is relocated. And as I mentioned, there's limited service that is allowed here. There's only so many trains that can use the Middleborough main line right now, so adding new train trips to New Bedford and Fall River is really challenging because of the capacity constraints. So these are some of the things that are going to be looked at over the next 6 months. Again, no decisions have been made on this. It's all part of the investigation that is going on right now. Whoops. Oh, man. There we go. So sorry, this is a little sensitive. So I just want to reiterate it again, before any of that construction from that Cotley Junction in Taunton South, before any of that can happen, permitting the entire Stoughton Strait electric alternative is required. So that requires more design advancement from Taunton North to that 30% design level, development of notice of intent applications, going through the local conservation commissions, DEP, those steps to get the record of decision from the Army Corps, and ultimately get that 404 permit. There. So next steps, and this is where we're going on now. The first bullet really reflects what we're doing today. The Secretary was definitely wanted to get feedback from the public, so there's the series of these public meetings. We're taking comment and feedback, and Nancy, I mentioned a couple of steps. You'll have your opportunities after I'm done here to provide those comments. Those will be collected. We have 6 of these meetings. While these meetings are going on, we're also collecting more data on survey data, wetland flag locations and such along the Middleborough Secondary. We'll be looking at different service options, what the cost and construction schedule would be. Collect all this, provide it to MassDOT. The Secretary will then share the results in the winter 2016, 2017, and ultimately make decision whether to continue with this Middleborough option, this new Middleborough option or not. So, so there's a lot of work that needs to happen over the next couple of months to get some better and clear information for that evaluation. So a couple of questions for you, the public, to ponder, and we've had some robust answers from some of the other communities that we've presented insofar as should MassDOT continue investigating this Middleborough option, number one, and number two is if what additional information, what else do you need to know? And, and this is your opportunity to ponder those questions, ask or put comments both here tonight through the website and other media opportunities. So our immediate next steps continue these. We continue looking at the options, and ultimately, while we're doing this, we continue to advance the Stoughton Strait alternative. As I mentioned, we need to do that to get the permit anyway, so we're doing that simultaneous to this exercise of looking at the Middleborough option. That, I will pass it back to Nancy to take over.
Thanks for your patience. That was a little longer than we expected, but worthwhile, I hope. So we have a few elected officials here. I'm going to offer the microphone to Senator Rodrigues. Do you have a few words to share with us?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone here today. This is a great crowd, and I guess I'll direct my remarks directly to the South Coast Rail Project team. Thank you very much for being here. I'm Senator Michael Rodrigues. I was first elected to the state legislature in 1996, and 20 years ago when Governor Weld gave me my first oath of office, South Coast Rail was an issue in that race, and here we are 20 years later. That was shortly after, and it was fresh in everyone's memory, that Governor Weld stood on the steps of Fall River Government Center and said, if I don't have this commuter rail built by the end of my term, go ahead and sue me. Well, there's 5 governors since. Every governor that I've worked with from either party pledged support of South Coast Rail, and we've had many, many fits and starts. I was disappointed I forgot in my rush to get out of the State House today, knowing I was going to have at least a 2-hour drive home, but the chrome-plated groundbreaking shovel that, if you visit me in my State House office, I'll show you, that was the groundbreaking for the Fall River New Bedford commuter rail, October 1998. And here we are still talking about it. Now, I understand we've gone through a few reiterations of DEIRs and FEIRs and various environmental secretaries. The Stoughton route was always the preferred alternative because many of the, issues with the former Middleborough route that really were critical, like the bottleneck up in Braintree and the fact that you have to back up, I think it was 12 minutes back up, and this was all critical. But to answer your question, should you continue to look at the Middleborough alternative? Absolutely yes. This is not the same Middleborough alternative as we've been talking about for the last 20 years. This new alternative would hopefully eliminate that backup of 12-minute backup with the discovery of new rights-of-way up through Braintree, the bottleneck. We could provide the capacity to get trains running to Fall River and New Bedford in just a few short years. I was very disappointed to hear today when I got the memo that you need to complete the 404 permit before any construction can start on the Southern Triangle. I don't understand that. To me, it's not common sense, but then when does the word common sense and Army Corps of Engineer ever go together? But I will pledge to work with you, along with my colleagues from the Greater Fall River Legislative Delegation, to see if that can be looked at and addressed. I don't know if, I don't know. I just heard that, and I don't, like I said, it really doesn't make sense. That Southern Triangle is needed regardless of what route we go, whether we go Stoughton Electric or Middleborough Alternative Diesel. But if you could guarantee us 2 trains a day, no, it's not 10 or 12 trains a day, but if you can guarantee us 2 trains a day, and I can get on a train and know that in 90 minutes I'll be getting off the train, right on that train, an air-conditioned, Wi-Fi-enabled train, work while I'm going back and forth to my office, not only myself, but thousands of other residents from the South Coast will take that opportunity. So I appreciate you being here. You know, I'm going to give you just one anecdotal story, and some of my colleagues have heard this, but I had a young lady that worked for me at the State House. She's from Connecticut. She came to Boston like so many young people do to go to school. She went to Tufts University and then got a master's at Suffolk. And she and her boyfriend, who is from New York City, and he went to Northeastern, and you know, he works in a financial district, she at the State House. They don't own a car. As the mayor said, millennials don't own vehicles. And to own a vehicle, to own a car, it's foreign to someone like myself to think that you can live without a car, but they do in Boston because it's so expensive not only to buy a car, to insure them, to garage them, or find parking, that they don't. When they go visit her parents in Connecticut or his in New York City, they get one of those zip cars or rental cars and you rent it for the weekend and return it when they're through. And she was forced to move out of, they were forced to move out of their apartment. And she came to me one day and she said, Senator, I just cannot find a place to live that is less than $2,200 a month. And we're only looking for a one-bedroom apartment, Paul and I. That's all we need. And I said, Tara, I said, come to Fall River. I had a cousin at the time who has this beautiful two-bedroom Victorian apartment on Middle Street in Fall River, right near St. Anne's Hospital, with the round turret room and hardwood floors and double parlors. We know what these houses are like in Fall River. He's having a hard time getting $850 a month for that apartment. I said, you can save over $1,000 a month just by moving to Fall River. And she said, Senator, get me the train and I'll move to Fall River. And that's when, once again, the light went off in my head. What Fall River and New Bedford and this region needs are the Taras and Pauls, these young, highly educated professionals that are they have an upward mobility path, and they have a long, very successful careers ahead of both of them. Those are the demographics. Those are the people we need back in Fall River, because we have really turned the tide over the last decade or so, both in Fall River and New Bedford, on stress and educational attainment, ensuring that more and more of our children are getting college degrees and going to institutions like this at BCC or UMass Dartmouth or Bridgewater State or any of the local institutions, and they graduate, and what happens? They move. They move to Boston, or they move to Seattle, or they move to North Carolina. We need to keep them, these young, smart people, here, because they're the ones that add so much to the quality of life of this city. So I thank you for being here. I encourage you absolutely to look at the Middleborough alternative, and I pledge my full support in whatever you need. We've got, $100+ million in the SIP for South Coast Rail. Use it wisely. I would hope that we could work on this 404 permit. You're going to have to educate me on how we can best help you with that, but I pledge to you we will. So thank you very much for being here.
I think Representative Sylvia, you were here next. Do you want to?
Good evening, and thank you. Thank you for coming to our great city, and I'd like to thank all of you who are here this evening, because this is so important to us. We've heard lots about time and money, and if there's two things that my constituents talk about all the time when they're not making a joke about South Coast Rail, because they've heard it for so many years, and it's going to save money, and it's going to be done sooner than the proposed 10 years, 12 years, $3.4 billion, and that number continuing to rise. This morning, while I drove to our State House, I gave lots of thought and pondered over some of the few words that I was going to say. But when I did arrive, I never write. But as I was driving, I said, I got to write a couple of these things down, because my huge staff, one person, had given me some some little figures about unemployment and about assessed value of property, and I wanted to be sure to do that. But I just wanted to say that as I drove to Boston, I left Fall River at 7:30, and I had a 10 o'clock meeting. We had a caucus meeting at the Parker House. Left 7:30, went as fast as I possibly could, and at about 10 of, I pulled into Ashburton Place. Almost 2.5 hours. And, one of my colleagues about a month ago, that's usually, that's not a bad time. It's been 3 hours and sometimes longer. About a month ago, one of my colleagues, as I parked my car in the garage, one of my colleagues saw me standing near my vehicle, and he looked over and he said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm okay. My legs are not working." My legs would not walk. I could not walk. I actually have a Stop and Shop plastic bag in behind my seat, stuffed into the carrier, with a plastic hospital urinal. Isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? Oh. Because I'm getting older. The mayor talked about he's worried about his grandchildren. I'm worried about checking in. That's how long it's been. It's been so long, and it's really sad. So I just wanted to say that, Boston has an extensive public transportation network. I'm sorry, excuse me. I didn't think it was that funny. Boston has an extensive public transportation network. Fall River does not. Brockton, Lawrence, Lowell, Lynn, and Worcester have a commuter rail link linking those cities with Boston, the economic hub of New England. Fall River does not. Boston, Brockton, Lowell, Lynn, and Worcester have low unemployment rates. Fall River does not. 6.6% in Fall River. Latest number, always double the state average, has been for the longest time, as long as I can remember, double. Boston, Brockton, Lowell, Lawrence, Lynn, real estate markets have grown in 1 year 6 to 10%. 6 to 10% in just 1 year. Fall River has not. Our assessed value has only crept up 3.6%. Residents of Brockton, Lawrence, Lowell, and Lynn are within a reasonable commuting distance to jobs in the Boston area because of the rail. Fall River residents are not. Extending the rail lines to Fall River represents access, opportunity, and growth. A train to Boston from Fall River will provide greater access to the jobs, our economy, culture, and entertainment available in the Boston area. A train to Boston from Fall River will help Fall River's workers to take better advantage of opportunities in the strong Boston job market by offering them an additional commuting option. A train to Boston from Fall River will compel educated professionals and working families priced out of the Boston area real estate market, as we just talked about, to consider Fall River as a housing alternative, which means growth for our city. Fall River deserves this opportunity. For too many years, the city has been cut off from the economic drivers that have propelled the rest of our state. For too many years, our cries for a train to Boston that will provide greater access to Fall River residents have been ignored. For too many years, we have contributed to the growth of this great Commonwealth without receiving many of its benefits with regard to transportation. It's time to change that, and so it's not a matter of a want or even a need. We really, this is a demand that's that important to the future growth of this area. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Haddad?
Thank you. Thank you for coming down to all of the cities and towns that are going to be affected by whatever happens. I'm not nearly as entertaining as my colleague, but I do want to tell you that for me, this is a matter of fairness, as we've all said, from the mayor to the senator to the representative. This is a matter of fairness. Fairness to our area of the world, because we've felt for so long that we're sort of second-class citizens. You know, the senator talked about his young people. I have one nephew who is commuting right now. He was lucky enough to get a job right out of college in Boston. He goes up to Attleboro, drives to Attleboro, gets on the train. So he can get a little work done because he doesn't want to sit in the traffic. I have a daughter that is up in Newton and will not come back because she can't get a job down here, and so I have to go there to, well, she comes to visit me with the grandchildren, but, you know, it's those kinds of things that we could have lots of people closer to us if we had the opportunity to have solid commuting that was not hit or miss. So I'm here to say, yes, I want you to look at the Middleborough route too. I want you to look at Middleborough, I want you to look at Stoughton, and I want to make sure that we down here get rail in a timely manner. And I'm also worried about the costs. So I'm not just saying come at any cost. I say come and make sure that we are spending our money well. I should have said this first, I represent most of the town of Swansea, all of the town of Somerset, all of the town of Dayton, and a small piece of Taunton. Looking at the Middleborough route, Taunton would be hurt by this. That's hard for me to say that we should look at Middleborough over Stoughton, but I think we have to look at both. We have to be as fair as possible to all the communities, whether it's New Bedford, Fall River, Taunton. The mayor of Fall River talked about other cities along 24. Taunton is just as much in need of these same kinds of economic development options that we down here in New Bedford and Fall River are. So in your deliberations, I ask you for fairness. I ask you for timely, because I am a grandmother and I really would like to ride the train before I die. I, like everybody else, commute. I'm the one who drives. My complaint is, well, my colleague is a little TMI. My complaint is I literally, I'm not joking, went to the doctor. I'm saying, wow, my hip hurts, my hip hurts, my hip hurts. And he said to me, well, you know, what repetitive motion do you do? And I said, what do you mean, what repetitive motion? With my hip? Nothing. And then he looks at me and he says, you still commuting to Boston? And I said, oh, yes. He said, well, if you're going to continue to commute to Boston, your arthritis is going to get worse, and ultimately it's going to have to be taken care of. And so, you know, there are all of those things. There are all of those little things that we are willing to put up with in order to do the jobs that we love. People are willing to sit in traffic because they have jobs in Boston or north of Boston that they love and don't want to give up. But at the end of the day, I'm asking you to really look carefully. With all due respect to your governing board, please bag that whole idea about the buses. I mean, that's just, and the person, I have to say this because I taught her everything she knows, the person on the board who made that comment is a Somerset girl. I had her as a student. And with all due respect, she has not been back. And she probably has to visit her parents, but I mean to commute back. My traffic issues start at Route 140, if not before. But they definitely start at Route 140. And so, you know, a bus really doesn't, it's not going to cut it. So I'm asking for fairness. I'm asking you to worry about the price. I'm asking you for timely judgment, and I'm also asking you for a timely process that actually brings us trains. So thank you very much for coming.
Senator Pacheco, would you like to join us this evening?
Thank you very much. I am impressed with the turnout. Last evening in Taunton, we had, well, actually, it wasn't last evening, it was Monday. In Taunton, we had my name is Mark Pacheco. I'm the state senator for the 1st Plymouth and Bristol District, representing Taunton and a number of communities in the central part of southeastern Massachusetts, going down to Wareham and to Carver and to many communities, again, in the central part of southeastern Massachusetts and to the southern part of southeastern Massachusetts and to what some people would call Upper Cape in Wareham. You go through 28 and you see the signs entering Cape Cod, in Wareham. I am here to testify publicly, and I intend to go to the rest of the meetings, because I don't want to continue to waste taxpayers' money again on another proposal that has been eliminated not once, not twice, but 3 times eliminated. And that is the Middleborough interim option. It's been eliminated because, as far as ridership is concerned, you lose half of the riders. Half. A decrease of half of the riders to start off with. I'm glad that the representatives from DOT stated at tonight's meeting at the beginning that the 404 process needs to be complete, because there was a lot of communication problem at the very beginning of this whole thing that came out to elected officials, mayors, and everyone, as if we wanted to go forward from Cotley Junction down, that we could just go ahead and do that. I'd be the first one to say, well, let's go ahead and do it. No problem, because we're going to develop that section no matter which option we take. Can't be done. It's against the federal process. Might not be against the state process if we can figure out where we're going to get the money from. But to pay for this, we're going to need state and federal funds. Just being honest with you. We need state and federal resources at the table. So we need to go through the permitting process. And to do that permitting process correctly, the Army Corps needs the whole Stoughton line signed off before you can do anything further. Now, once you have the whole Stoughton line signed off on, and if we have federal partners, why should southeastern Massachusetts take leftover scraps or a temporary fix? We're just as good as anywhere else in Massachusetts down here. We shouldn't settle for second best. We should demand, and that's been the problem. That's been the problem all these years. I love my colleagues, work with them, I have a great deal of respect for all of them. You couldn't have harder working legislators than the other legislators I serve with that are here tonight. And I respect other elected leaders that may have a different opinion than I on this. But I've got to tell you, just because my longevity in the legislature and my long-standing work in public service, I have worked on this the longest. I've been traveling back and forth to Boston for 28 years into the legislature. And I have seen proposal after proposal from Democratic and Republican governors come forward, and just about the time we were going to need to do the final permitting, bait and switch, something else comes up. You know why? Because they really don't know where the money's coming from to pay for it. They don't have it identified. If we need to raise new money, they don't want to talk about that. And so the easiest way politically to get out of that problem, the political problem, is you come up with another set of solutions. Well, this year, it's the Middleborough Interim Route that has been eliminated 3 times. And I think DOT experts here can tell you to go through the rest of that process. It's going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 years just to get through that part of the process. Well, 2 or 3 years from now to get through that part of the process, and we'd be having the approvals on the whole Stoughton line and the bottom tier, all done. So why should we have anything else interim? Why don't we go forward with the whole project right away? We need federal partners to the table as well, federal partners. We need to reach out to our federal delegation. My friends, I just want to say this. We have waited, in my case, since 1979 for commuter rail. That's the first time I started talking about this, back as a school committee member in the city. I'm not answering questions, sir. I'll talk to them. I'll talk to you after if you'd like to. Well, they will in a minute. We had people from Fall River last night Monday night speak in Taunton. And we had people from New Bedford and Fairhaven and Dayton speak as well. So I just want to conclude my remarks by saying that it is extremely important. We've waited all this time. The election, the national election, is over with, and a lot of us would like it to be over with a lot sooner, but it's over with in November, November 8th. Both major party candidates have put forth as a core part of their platforms investing in transportation infrastructure and public transportation, both. They'll be coming out, I know for a fact, one of the candidates that I'm supporting will be coming out with a plan immediately after the election and being sworn into office for transportation. All you have to do is go on the website. That brings into play a federal partner. That means that we can afford the Stoughton option. So I ask you to consider that. I ask Department of Transportation to consider that. And it is not fair. Back in the old days here, I was in the mayor's office in Taunton, back when Carlton Viveros was mayor of Fall River, and Mayor Markey was over in New Bedford, and we had a mayor in Attleboro, and this is how we used to work things for the region back then. If there was a plan coming forward from the state that impacted any one of our communities negatively, we were all off. All off. We wouldn't support it. Because the way we got things regionally done is we all stuck together regionally, and we didn't just take something because and leave somebody else out in the cold. My final point is the Taunton piece, which was not, again, explained totally, Lisa was mentioned tonight. The main rail station in downtown Taunton is eliminated under the Middleborough option. It's eliminated. The economic development opportunities for the downtown, the largest landed city in Massachusetts. That's where most of the growth will be, in terms of rail, if we had that option downtown. That's wrong. It's not fair, and that's why the Taunton Municipal Council last night voted unanimously with everyone that could legally vote. There was one member that could not legally vote on it. All members voted unanimously to oppose the Middleborough option. And I believe you're going to see litigation either in the southern tier. You'll see litigation come forward if the Middleborough option goes forward. And let me tell you why. Berkeley, this area up here where the Cotley Junction is, where you move the station south, is actually closer to most of Berkeley than it is to the majority of Taunton. Berkeley residents, years ago, before we picked the Stoughton option, were opposed, and we're getting together a citizens group, a citizens petition to petition and sue. Their opposition went away when we picked the Stoughton option. In Middleborough, there was a whole group of residents down there who were in the same position. They were getting ready to sue. Their opposition went away when the Stoughton option was picked. So to do an apples and apples comparison and saying the Stoughton route, well, you may have a suit that might tie that up a little bit. Well, believe me, you do the Middleborough option, you're going to have a suit. It's going to tie it up just as long. So let's not make it about litigation when most of the problems have been solved through mitigation. Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sarah LaPointe is here to read a letter on behalf of Representative Carol Fiola. And then are there any other elected officials here? No, and then at that point, oh, I'm sorry.
But I don't want to speak.
Okay.
I'd rather deal with it.
Okay, great. So as soon as Sarah's done, we'll open the microphone.
Hello, everyone. MassDOT and MBTA representatives, as you continue your public process listening tour, please accept my comments as being 100% in support of the Middleborough Rail alternative, as opposed to the Stoughton route for the reestablishment of commuter rail from the South Coast to Boston.
I can't hear you.
I don't understand.
At this time, with cost of the Stoughton line estimated at $3.4 billion and with numerous environmental impact concerns, I believe the Middleborough option is the most logical, practical, and economical design for South Coast Rail. Please understand the transformative economic effects South Coast Rail will have on our community's residents and businesses. This mass transit connection of the South Coast to the MBTA has been long awaited, and we are now at the cusp of seeing tangible results in progress. What we know of the Middleborough route option today demonstrates that it is the most expeditious alternative and will make the project's completion become a reality. I encourage MassDOT and the MBTA to utilize the $148 million that has been set aside in the 2016 Governor's Construction Improvement Plan for South Coast Rail to begin work on the necessary rail line improvements from both Fall River and New Bedford to Taunton shortly after the public input sessions are complete. After all, no matter which route is selected, it is absolutely essential that the rail from the Fall River and New Bedford north to Taunton be upgraded to commuter rail standards. Please keep in mind that such an upgrade will allow limited service to begin from Fall River, New Bedford, and Taunton. Limited service could consist of 2 or 3 trains a day from each location with a pickup in Taunton. While this may necessitate a cross-platform transfer in Brockton, where passengers switch to one train so as not to further congest the Savin choke point, limited service can be started while the other issues, such as the Cape Cod extension and answering the question as to whether the relocation of the Middleborough line is necessary, are being worked on. Given the fact that we have been chasing the Stoughton route for the last 25 years without any success, and there remains tremendous financial, permitting, and scheduling articles in front of us, the time has come for us to abandon the Stoughton route and begin limited service to Boston via Middleborough, while we simultaneously address the other issues that will enable us to reach full service within the next 5 years. If you have any questions or need anything further, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you again for your attention to this critical matter of our region. So this letter was on behalf of Representative Fiola, and I'm here to support her. So thank you.
Thank you for your patience. Who would like to make a comment first? Lady right there, just raise your hand. In the pink shirt, orange.
Oh dear. Hi, my name is Kelsey Garcia, and I'm a student at UMass Dartmouth. I am in support of the Middleborough route because I'm graduating soon, and everyone else is graduating as well. You're only there for a few years, and when we're gone, we want jobs that are available to us. And if we have to go to Boston or we have to go to California or wherever, we're going to follow those jobs. I love the South Coast. I love Massachusetts, and I want to stay here, but I can only stay if I can support myself and I can support a future family. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Right here. If you tell us your name and where you're from, it's nice for the record, so thank you.
Hi, my name's Sabrina Davis, and I'm from Fall River. I'm with an organization called the Coalition for Social Justice, and public transit is a very large part of social justice. The commuter rails, whichever option is picked, because we need a rail. I'm support for whichever one that works best for us, but we need the rail. It would provide so many job opportunities to us right now. I know that I could have a better job right now if there's a rail. And it's the same story for a lot of people. People who are getting educated here need to outsource, go elsewhere to go get funding. And to harken back to something that people are talking about, that Peter Pan bus, that hated Peter Pan bus. Back when I had to go to events, I had to pick a foreign language to transfer to another college. I had to attend events up in Boston, and when I had to do that, it was $35. Okay, imagine working in Boston. And people do, because when I went to school here, I took the first bus, I seen them all line up to go there. $35, let's say 5-day work week, that's $175. Can you say ouch? But another thing that everybody's talking about is funding. And there is funding. There's a bill right now that my company worked on. It's called the Fair Share Amendment, and it's getting ready to go to a second constitutional amendment. So this is an endeavor to help raise funding for education, but that aside, for public transit, over $1 billion it would generate to be put towards public transit, which is desperately needed. So if you can just keep that in mind and talk to your legislators about it, because we all know we need a lot of funding for this rail. I hope that work gets underway soon for this. Because I'd love to take that train to Boston myself.
Thank you, Frida. This gentleman has been waiting for a while.
My name is Harmon LaPointe, small businessman from Fall River. And my question is, I'm totally confused after Senator Pacheco spoke. He said the best route in the world is the entire route, and he said it could be done in 3 years. What was mentioned earlier, if we continue with Stoughton, which it makes sense to be the best route, it's straight, and it's there. But we were talking about 2030, the year 2030, before anything could be done, and I don't think I'll be here then. But
I hope you will.
this is what I wanted to know. Was he right by saying it could be done in 3 years?
He meant that the permits could probably be gotten in 3 years. The permits that have to be gotten from the Army Corps and the Department of Environmental Protection.
Did anybody feel that he said we could get that done?
If he said that, that was a wish, a very big wish.
But do you all feel that the Middleborough route has a possibility, or are we wasting our time?
Well, that's a question we hope to answer with the work that's going to be done over the next few months. And we'll make available to...
I'm much in favor of the middle route if it's only going to take 4 or 5 years. But what I saw on that screen said 2030, and I'm not going to make it. Thank you.
Oh, we're happy to have you with us tonight. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jim Openshaw. And I have to clear folks on a few things because there was a couple of things that weren't very accurate. Okay? The gentleman over there come up and said that there's a lot of trains that run out and makes Middleborough not feasible. That is not true. Dead not true. I worked the line for 11 years. I was a Conrail conductor, an engineer. There's nobody that knows that line better than me. Okay? And there was another issue about the Middleborough route being a better route, because when you look at the factors on a freight car, it's 130 ton loaded, 100 ton empty. What's a passenger car weigh? Very light. It's like a feather. So you're looking at comparing apples and oranges on freight trains on the rail. The rail's in good shape because I think it'll run in, 25 miles an hour? 20, 25 miles an hour through there? With a freight train, that's pretty good speed. And one thing the DOT don't understand either, if you go around and take stats around the country, 95% of your freight trains run at night. UPS trains, piggybacks, deep well center cars, all those hot commodity cars run at night. They have a reason why they run at night, so nobody else is out there playing around. So to make that feasible, to make the Middleborough feasible, it's a good idea. And if you're having trouble with those two issues, you can go, you want to put a station in Taunton near Carly Junction, you can run it straight out and go right out to Attleboro and go right out the racetrack. We call that the racetrack. Attleboro racetrack, you go right out and go right up to Boston with that. That's another way you can go. Another way you can look at that. Because that's how we used to get our cars in and out. And then this lady over here said about putting crew quarters. Why are you going to put crew quarters? Why? you have a crew. We are a crew. Anybody's a crew. But the thing is, you don't need crew quarters if you hire the jobs here, not from Boston. Because I understand that when Middleborough came down, a lot of the guys are from Boston. What keep the job in the towns that they're coming into?
It's office, it's not housing.
Well, no, I know it's not housing. I'm not saying it's not public housing. I know that. It's just a place for them to rest and get a little bit of shut-eye. That's what we call it. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. This gentleman here, right? And then the gentleman in the back row after that. And then I'll go to the other side again.
Hi, my name is Dave Mead. I'm a BCC student, ABE student for Bristol Community College. And all I want to say is that, you know, when I was 20, this project's been going on since I was like 20 years old, and now I'm almost 50. So why don't we just get this project started and get the federal and get some federal funding involved with this and some partners so we can get this going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
My name is Norman Vieira. I'm from New Bedford. And the concern with the environment is a very big issue, and it has to be addressed. It has to be done right. Also, too, the impact on the communities in which this rail is going to be running through on residents that abut the line. I know we've put a big emphasis on the environment, but however, we're seeing what work that the Army Corps of Engineers do, especially in my wife's country where the bridges are still standing that they put up after World War II. So speaks volumes for them. But my big concern is the impact on residents that abut these rail lines, especially the ones that are right on top of them.
There's a lot of information about that in the final environmental impact report and statement.
Yeah.
And that has certainly been reviewed in great detail.
In a sense, too, I think there's a lot that's being missed. I mean, things should really be looked at. I live on it. I know. But environmental impact is an important issue as well.
Absolutely.
But also, too, community
Yes.
that it goes through.
We can direct you to that information.
Okay. The other thing is, too, I mean, I abut the line, but we're still up in the air as far as diesel, electric, what it's going to take to put it in. I mean, my property abuts it. Statum poles are going to take up room. I mean, there's going to be an effect, and I'm deeply concerned about it. I'm still deeply concerned about it because I have to live there. So as soon as that information is available, I really, truly would like to know.
The Stoughton alternative is supposed to be electric.
It's supposed to be electric,
Right.
but also, too, which is it going to be in New Bedford?
Yes. I mean, that's part of
Right.
what this exploration is about.
As far as property values go, I truly believe it's going to have an adverse effect on the properties that abut the line. Houses on my street in New Bedford have sold for a lot more that are across the street than opposed to the ones that abut the line. I mean, I can't see it bringing up a property value as far as that goes. I've also tried to get an appointment with the mayor of New Bedford to at least voice my concern to him. So far, I've been unsuccessful in getting that appointment to speak to him for at least 30 minutes. Really would like to sit down with him and talk and let him know my concerns. The mayor of Fall River, I commend him for a job that he's been doing so far. It's been really out there, involved with the people, the community. I hope he is looking at that as well, the effect of the abutters on the rail line, residents that have to live with it. So, in a sense, that is one of my biggest concerns, along with the environment, that, you know, the permitting, working with the Army Corps of Engineers to get this achieved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This gentleman? This is Hugh, right?
Right.
This is Hugh, yes.
Hugh Dunn on behalf of the South Coast Development Partnership. For the record, the South Coast Development Partnership supports the exploration of the Middleborough alternative. Commuter rail service to this region will result in new residential units, increased commercial development, creation of both long-term and short-term jobs, higher land values, and an associated increase in local property tax values. It has been clear for nearly 3 decades that providing commuter rail access to Boston is critical to our region's economic growth, and it needs to be advanced as quickly as possible. With this in mind, we hope that by having all the meetings in September, that MassDOT can determine by the end of the year whether Middleborough is in fact legally, technically, and fiscally feasible. Should this be determined feasible, we would support the immediate advancement of a project that provides service to Fall River, New Bedford, and Taunton with at least 3 a.m. and p.m. peak period trips. With the goal of linking South Coast to Boston as quickly as possible, we further urge MassDOT to enable an expedited design, permitting, and construction schedule for the Southern Triangle, which is necessary under either alternative. We urge DOT to work expeditiously with the Army Corps and your federal partners for the federal permitting necessary. It's our understanding that the Southern Triangle is at 30%, so we urge DOT to begin pulling state permits for this part of the project. We are encouraged by all the work that you have done this far, and we urge DOT to include funding necessary to build out the Southern Triangle within the next CIP. Thank you.
Yes. And I'll go over there in a minute.
Good evening. I have a letter to read on behalf of the Fall River Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Kimberly Koromonis, and I'm the vice president there. Dear officials of Massachusetts Department of Transportation and the MBTA, the Fall River Area Chamber of Commerce and Industry urges that Massachusetts Department of Transportation and the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority research and select a commuter rail extension alternative other than the proposed South Coast Rail, Stoughton Route to Fall River and New Bedford. The Chamber's frustration on this issue of commuter transportation to Boston is real. After decades of advocacy for South Coast Rail, the solution is no closer today than it was 10 years ago. The laments in the South Coast over long drives to Boston are not new. Nearly 25 years ago, former Governor William Weld went to South Coast promising to ramp up passenger rail, declaring, "Sue me if it doesn't happen." His successors kept the dream alive, but never got it built. Meanwhile, the congestion on Route 24 and Interstate 93 keeps getting worse. The status quo is unacceptable. Part of the problem in building a South Coast rail may be the proposed Stoughton route looks great in theory, but regrettably faces too many tangible obstacles that is in their totality outweigh the many benefits. A major impediment has been the identifying of the $3.4 billion funding source, while it is estimated that over $7 to $8 billion is needed to repair the existing MBTA lines. Another has been fighting off legal challenges by environmental and historic preservation groups who are protecting the Hockomock Swamp. Other challenges includes contending against the economic interest of the 300-plus-year-old historic town of Easton, whose village center sits right on top of the proposed railway route. The bottom line is that the currently proposed Stoughton route is not rational. This is why now is the best opportunity to examine any and all practical alternatives to the proposed Stoughton route. Another alternative to the Stoughton route, such as the proposed Middleborough extension alternative, are far from ideal. The problem is that the Stoughton route is a non-starter. This is why any pragmatic alternative that could realistically connect Fall River and New Bedford to Boston within 4 to 5 years should be given great consideration. If the goal at MassDOT and the MBTA is to immediately address congestion on Route 24 to Boston, which is getting worse, then an alternative to the Stoughton route should be researched and agreed upon before the end of 2016. Then let us build it within 3 to 5 years using existing MassDOT funding already allocated for South Coast Rail. Thank you for your time and your indulgence in this very important matter. Respectfully submitted, Robert Millian, President and CEO and General Counsel of the Fall River Area Chamber of Commerce.
And will you submit that letter?
I will. I have
Great,
copies.
thank you, thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Tom LaPointe, lifelong Fall River resident. I commute to Route 24 every day. I can attest to it being a zoo. If you listen to WBZ, the traffic reports, there are accidents there on a daily basis, especially the stretch between 140 and 495. Fall River's been waiting for commuter rail way too long, and there has been a lot of effort put into the development of the Stoughton route. It's despite the environmental objections. Remember, these lines were originally built for coal-burning steam locomotives. So to me, a lot of the environmental objections are smoke screens. No pun intended there. But we really need commuter rail. If the Middleborough route will get the trains running, at least interim, I would still encourage development of the Stoughton route, because I think you're going to find capacity-wise, you would if the line is as popular as I think it's going to be, I think you start running into capacity issues. In fact, correct me on this, am I to understand one of the reasons the Middleborough route was not developed initially was due to capacity constraints at South Station?
And Quincy.
And Quincy.
Yes, right.
If we run Middleborough now, in other words, you're talking cross-platform transfers to do that, or are you running trains directly into South Station?
That's one of the issues that will be investigated.
Okay, all right. I would recommend, there seems to be a large consensus that let's get some service here, period. Certainly get the South Triangle built. Either way, that portion of the route is needed. Get that construction done on that at any rate. I would advise building with the potential, at least, for electrification further down the line. Even if you do diesels into interim, the electrified service would be much faster. So I just say get the trains rolling as fast as you can. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. In the back there, gentleman who's been patient with me. Somewhat.
Good evening. My name is Tim Cole. I'm the Vice Chair of the Rail to Boston Coalition. First of all, I want to thank the Department of Transportation for holding this forum for us to get a chance to express our opinions and thoughts on this issue. I also want to point out and commend Mayor Correa for his speech earlier today. I thought it was powerful. So I grew up in Fall River. I attended Durfee High School. I went on to earn degrees from Boston University, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and UMass Dartmouth. In my career, I've worked as an IT recruiter in regional economic development planning, and now in commercial lending at Bay Coast Bank. I mention my background because it gives me a unique perspective on the opportunities that South Coast Rail would provide to Fall River. For example, as an IT recruiter, I know that people who live 2 hours away or more with unpredictable traffic often don't get a call for the job interview. As a senior strategy and research manager in economic development, I can tell you that economies are built around transportation infrastructure. As a banker, I can tell you that property values go up when there are more jobs that are accessible, and when values go up, more property owners may qualify for bigger loans. And when more loans can be made, there's more investment in the community. In short, South Coast Rail means more money circulating in our communities, but in the long term, it can mean much more. I also come from a family of educators, most of whom work right here in the Fall River School District. As a result, I can say that circumstances in Fall River will not improve unless the education in these communities continues to improve as well. So how do we improve education if we can't increase tax revenues from higher property values? How do we increase pay for our teachers if we don't have more investment in the community? How do we continually attract the best teachers if we don't increase the pay? Well, without better access to jobs and an improved education system, how many of our kids or grandkids will move back to Fall River when they have a family of their own? So yes, South Coast Rail is about investment, it's about jobs, it's about education, it's about community, and it's even about families. In other words, South Coast Rail is about much more than a faster trip to Boston. It's truly about the future of Fall River. Now, I don't think anybody else has pointed this out yet. There's an email address here posted on the board, southcoastrail@dot.state.ma.us. And I'd encourage folks to reach out with a simple message. I'm going to end on a slightly lighter note. So I assume most of us are Patriots fans. And if we could just send one simple email with 3 words that would help the Patriots win, don't you think we would do it? Something like, "Good luck, Pats," right? And if you knew that that was going to help the Patriots win, you'd send that email. Well, you can send an email to that email address with 3 simple words, "Make it happen," and that will help improve the outcomes in Fall River.
And I forgot to say that email address is also on the flyers that are at the front table, so you don't have to memorize it. You can take a flyer from the front table and bring it home with you. You can make that happen. Yes, sir, it's Tom, is that it? Larry, sorry.
My name is Larry Perret from Fall River. I come with a little different perspective than a lot of people here because I've been kind of a grassroots guy on this project for quite some time. About 2014, I became very involved, asked Gene Fox to provide me some information because I was deeply concerned and knew how deeply this city needs this rail system, and it does. When you look around and when you live here, you see this amount of people that work and this amount of people that don't work. And the following year, this amount of people still work, and the list goes up for people that don't work. Some of that's from people who can't work, some of that's from people who can't find a job, but whatever the case is, we got to get more jobs down here. This place has to thrive. Kathy Ann can't pay any bills if this amount of people are paying the bills all the time, and the state regulations go up and the federal regulations go up. This can't happen. So I took it upon myself to go around the city and had Gene provide me some information to go to every neighborhood group in the city and provide them information on where the rails stood at this point. And on my journey through that, I went to Somerset and spoke to the council there. I went to Tiverton, spoke to the council there. I went to Westport, talked to the council there. And again, went to every neighborhood group in the city. And I was expecting to find resistance there. I was expecting a fight. And not one person, not one representative was against this system. Not one. I wish I could tell you a story of somebody that said, "No, I don't want the rail," but there wasn't one, because they all see how desperately this area needs to grow. And this is the tremendous tool that will help us do that. We need the rail system to come down here. With the help of Val and Sylvia in the south end, we provided a meeting there. At that meeting, we had people from every neighborhood group. We had State Representative Edwards there from Rhode Island. All of these people were more than excited about to see this rail develop, but the time on it is just, tremendous. So I'm in favor of this proposal. We'd like to see it move forward, and please just, let's do this. I mean, people have been waiting a long time. Please, let's move this forward so that these people and these people can have something down here. I'd like to publicly thank Carol Fiola, Representative Sylvia, Representative Schmidt. They have never fallen off the tracks. All the time and all the years that I've been grassrooting these things, these people never fall off the tracks. And Gene never falls off the tracks. As far as Mr. Pacheco goes, in his statement, he spoke about sticking together. Well, if you're a representative, where is your sticking together? Okay? We're not going to get this done by suing people. We're not going to get this done by going all these, I understand if there's federal funds that's going to be available, great. Let's get these federal funds and let's put them towards a project that can get us going here. But let's stick together and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Gentleman in the check shirt, and then Josh behind him, and I'll go back all the way.
Hi, good evening. My name is Robert Rack, and I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Fall River. And my father was a lifelong resident of the city of Fall River, and I just want someone to correct me if I'm wrong, but the taxpayers of this area have supported the development of every other rail system in the state. Is that correct? And yet, we don't have, for years, have supported all that. And we supported the Big Dig, and that went from $2 billion estimate to $14 billion. Somehow the money was found. Somewhere, it's probably still in the midst of getting it paid and everything, but somehow the money was organized to get it done. And so it's time now that the state, who we've supported for all this time, create the big ride for the people of this area. And so that it's required that, we've been waiting long enough, to have that. It's time that funding be concentrated on this area, because it's been concentrated on every other area to get a rail system to Boston. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Josh Ostroff. I was born in Fall River, and my family's grew up here. My folks went to Durfee, and I could go on with my cred. Today, I live in Natick, and I'm interim director of the Transportation for Massachusetts Coalition. About a year and a half ago, we were privileged to have a visit by municipal legislative leaders and the Rail to Boston Coalition, and our coalition formally endorsed South Coast Rail for many of the reasons that have been well stated by people here, and I really applaud the passion of everyone in supporting the project. I want to just throw a note of caution that there's nothing more important than unity. The previous speaker mentioned how this region has supported projects elsewhere in the state. Elsewhere in the state, I hear people criticizing this project for its cost and questioning its value. When we are divided, we do not succeed. And it's really important to take that approach, in my opinion, to the different routes that are being considered, because it may be years, but more years than anyone in this room or in this region would like, before there could be service on Middleborough, whether that's on a permanent or temporary basis. And it may be never that the Middleborough route is possible if the cost to actually provide full service to Boston can't be supported by resolving this pinch point in Dorchester and Quincy, which really hasn't gotten a lot of discussion tonight. And it's very technical, but it relies on an engineering project that has not been costed out. We don't know what it would cost and who would pay for it, whether there'll be environmental, legal, other challenges. So I think that enthusiastic, unreserved support for Middleborough is premature. And if that ultimately undermines the Stoughton alternative, because if we find out in 6 months or 5 years or something else that that's the only choice, you don't want to have poisoned the well and say that Stoughton is a bad idea. when we talk about transportation projects, we're not just doing it for ourselves. I mean, if I were privileged to live in this region today, and my mom just moved from Westport to Natick less than a year ago, I would feel the same way you do, but I'd be thinking about it for the legacy that we leave behind, and what do we want the future of Fall River, New Bedford, Taunton, and all the other communities that are so wonderful around here to be. So I think it's important to have patience, as difficult as that is, allow the engineers to do the work they need to do, let this environmental permitting proceed, stay involved and informed, by all means support the project. But I would not throw too much shade on a route that you don't support. Whether you favor Stoughton or favor Middleborough, one, the other, or both are critical to moving this thing forward. But unless the region is united and respectful, within each other, it just won't happen, because there's too many other projects ahead of time. And I just say there's other parts in the state that want to see things happen as well. We certainly don't have the revenue in place. A big supporter of a federal government that helps build public transportation. That's not the case today. I hope it's the case tomorrow. But we don't have the state revenue to support significant expansions or maintenance for the system that we own today, and we need to address that. Whether that's the millionaire's tax that was talked about or some other form of leadership at the state level, that's going to require enthusiasm and positive thinking, and not negativity. So I'm sorry to take so much time. I'm glad to stay because I'm really interested in what people have to say about this. Thank you so much for running this.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. This gentleman.
I'm Lloyd Mendes. I'm speaking as a Somerset resident, but also a property owner in north of Taunton. So I can both win and lose for these different options. And I'm urging MassDOT to continue to evaluate all mass transit options that can be funded. It appears, whatever its merits, that the Stoughton, the $3.4 billion project through Stoughton won't be funded. It's not an option. So look at other options. With all due respect to our representative for Somerset, even look at the bus option, but certainly look at the Middleborough option. And I certainly take, with great respect, the remarks of the gentleman before. I don't mean to criticize any other option. I praise the governor for his open-mindedness to be able to look back as new data comes in and reach new conclusions. That's a rare trait in all people. I'd like to address some of the cited objections. The loss of half the ridership is only relative to a 75-minute trip. Well, the 75-minute trip is the $3.4 billion trip, $3.4 billion project, which can't be funded. We already know it can't be funded. We know people will promise it to us for another generation, but it won't be funded. The limited service. Limited service compared to what? The full service option can't be funded, so it's not an option. Our options are either limited service or no service. And by the way, taking issue respectfully with the gentleman before me, I don't believe you can simply negotiate away those constraints on the Middleborough line. I understand those are real physical constraints. They're not just political. And I accept that we will have to live with limited service for a long time to come. It's better than no service for another generation. As a North Taunton property owner, I will lose. I will lose out if you bypass the center of Taunton. However, the majority of young people in Taunton will benefit because they live in the Ware Village and they live in East Taunton. Don't look at this as cutting Taunton out. Taunton will have significant service for those people who need it most, young workers, through the southern end and the eastern end of town. Taunton is not being shortchanged here. And all the South Coast, from Taunton to New Bedford and Fall River, we all need these jobs desperately. We've waited. We've been sitting in the doldrums for 3 or 4 generations now. We need access to jobs in Boston. Our suburbs are aging. We need young immigrants from the Boston area to bring their energy and their youth and their kids to help raise our communities. Growth would be good for us. So I urge MassDOT to consider all mass transit options that can be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm still working through here. I'll come back.
Good evening, Kathy Viveris. I am city administrator in Fall River and also virtually a lifelong resident of the city as well. I am here this evening to, in fact, encourage you to continue your pursuit and evaluation of the Middleborough alternative, and to ask that your evaluation and analysis consider a rather in-depth analysis of the economic impacts that are likely to be created. When we look at a project like this, and specifically the $3.4 billion investment that would be required in the Stoughton line, we have to take a step back and consider what is the return on investment that we're likely to achieve by these alternatives. And I would respectfully suggest to you that the Middleborough option is going to provide you with a far greater return on investment, in part because of its reduced cost, but also because of the fact that it could be implemented much sooner. We all know that when we bring rail into an area, it is a catalyst for economic development, not only immediately along the line, but also into the areas that it's impacting. I think that a detailed economic analysis of not only the direct benefits, but also the indirect and spin-off benefits of economic development in the rail are key considerations in your evaluation. Return on investment basically looks at what are the costs and what are the benefits. And if you look at the cost for the Stoughton alternative versus the cost for the Middleborough alternative, I would respectfully suggest that the benefits, the economic benefits of the two options are going to come very close to similar to one another. I don't think you're going to see a dramatic difference. I think both alternatives are going to spur economic development along the lines and in the respective communities that they touch. So when you go ahead and do that calculation as to what the two alternatives are costing, and you look at the economic benefits that I would respectfully suggest are going to be somewhat comparable, that the Middleborough alternative is really going to be your preferred option. Take that economic impact and take it a step further. The fact that it's going to be completed far sooner than the Stoughton line, you're going to start to achieve those additional real estate tax revenues, sales tax revenues, excise tax revenues much sooner. So again, when you do that economic impact and you start to achieve those benefits far sooner with the Middleborough option, again, I respectfully request that when you calculate that return on investment, the Middleborough alternative is by far going to be your best option. I'll leave you on perhaps a much softer note. Fall River is a community that has tremendous economic resources, but also natural resources, historic resources, human resources. We are an aging community with an aging population. We need to breathe new life into our community. We have the benefits. We can attract and we can grow and become an equal economic partner through the entire state of Massachusetts. South Coast Rail is going to be a great incentive and a great motivator and a great element in the economic restoration of our community. And I urge you to consider the Middleborough alternative, look at those economic impacts, and I think you'll find that that will in fact be your preferred alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. You're next.
Hi, how are you? Lynn Oliveira with the Fall River Office of Economic Development. I would just like to voice our office's strong support for the Fall River Middleborough Railway extension to Boston. As people before me have alluded to, this project has been in the works for a very long time. The famous Governor Wald quote that many people have spoken of was over 25 years ago. And looking at the schedule, we're still 16 plus years out from realizing rail through the Stoughton route. Clearly to the extent that money was not an object, the Stoughton route would be preferable, but it's just not a practical option from the facts that are presented. The $3.4 billion project has no funding mechanism. It's not fully permitted. There's no implementation schedule. And there's also the strong chance of litigation from all the communities north of Taunton. So because of these challenges, it appears that the Middleborough route is the better alternative for the Fall River, New Bedford areas, in the fact that it will get the benefits of the rail and the economic benefits that we've heard about all night will be realized in a much shorter amount of time. So to get the economic benefits that the cities need, we would support the Middleborough route. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. This gentleman? Lynn?
Good evening. My name's Tom Lowney, longtime resident of Fall River and of Somerset at times. I've been watching the project for the rail since I can remember. Unfortunately, it's gone, all puns, south. It doesn't happen. I've sat in many meetings, community outreach, talked to Ms. Fox before, and we keep hitting the same barrier, yet I see the train going to Providence, paid for partially by Massachusetts tax dollars. Why that took precedence over our dilemma still baffles me. I see that the Green Line is looking to extend for, something like $1.6 billion. They're looking to do that. Yet after, 40 years of rail talk and planning, wasting of time, effort, and money, we are back here at this point again. I'm sorry to say I'm really annoyed with MassDOT. I am a proud resident of Fall River and the South Region, and have pushed at every opportunity for every project here in this city, from Route 79 projects to implementation of historic areas, preservation, economic growth, and I see more talk. And as was stated from various people, and I love listening to everybody here, and they all come up with excellent points to the problem. They say funding. We don't look for it in the right places, but I see, again, I'll bring up the Providence line. It happened. The Green Line, that is happening. We're being ignored down here. It's a bait and switch, to quote somebody. I, as many Fall River residents, are sick and tired of it. We provide taxes, the Brighton Street Bridge replacement. That was part of the DOT. Switching money around, that has to hold. Big dig, $14 billion. The bridge, how long did that take? Trial and error at Fall River's expense. How much did that cost our taxpayers for the bridge? Each one of these projects had a goal and a point and funding, yet they were mismanaged, delayed at our cost. I'm not too happy with a lot of people because I talk to a lot of people from this city. The rail is a joke. I hate to say it amongst the residents because they know it's not going to happen. Fall River's been under the gun from Boston. Boston takes precedence. Population, numbers, money. Doesn't happen. We're killing ourselves as a state. Part of this state, the southern region, has an economic potential that is outstanding. Fall River was the leading manufacturer of textiles. We transported freight, passengers. The Fall River line ran from New York City. It set the standard for the world's cruise industry. We are preciously located for transportation as well as New Bedford to the Cape to New York. Problems on 79, Braga Bridge, it's fixed. Why? People need to get to Cape Cod from New York. That problem is fixed, money's dumped into it. Why? You're impeding that. But for us, for a region, for our growth, our potential, this project needs to be straightened out. If the Middleborough line can be used as a temporary, because you're saying you have your, I'm listening here because I don't have the access to all the information. It is difficult to get the information because that is DOT's job to assess, evaluate, process, and put out. Back when we started the project fair for the Stoughton line, that was supposed to be the end of the debate. Put it down on paper, get the money moving, make it happen. And again, we're back here. We're looking at double what it cost when we looked at it back then. That wasn't that long ago. We're looking at other rail lines being completed amongst us, which we are second-class citizens again. We're being pushed back, because Fall River, New Bedford, Taunton, you can wait. We got bigger ideas. That's the impression that you give all the residency. It's how long? 30 to 40 years? How much can we be pushed under the table? It's legitimate. All our representatives are saying the same thing. It's an insult to the community. Providence got the rail. You don't know how much that ticked off a lot of people. Providence got a rail because, well, it's for the greater of the state, because now we're getting transportation between Boston and Providence airports. What about the rest of the coast? Nothing. We have a governor who failed to acknowledge that we were the only ones that didn't have a mass transit system. He had to be embarrassed in front of the state. We still, again, bait and switch, keep it off. We can't afford it. The price doubles. It doubles. If we can use the Middleborough line as a temporary, because majority of it is there, increased by 1 or 2 lines a day, just to get something started, to boost the impact, get the economy running. You're looking at what, a 10-mile run between that, the point, sorry, I can't read that from here. Talking a short line. We do that with highways. We put a temporary junction, tear down, restore, rebuild, take that line out, or use it for other connections later. If that can be investigated, put the Middleborough up line temporarily until the Stoughton line is cleared, rectified, and decided upon, use it as a temporary line. A bus line, I am sorry. That I was 20 years in the Navy. I was stationed in Newport, had to run from the shipyards in Boston. I was stationed in Boston. Now I work at a job in Quonset. I make the traveling run. I live traffic. A bus line is ridiculous. I'm sorry to say. You think of it as an option, but it's ridiculous because you're still not avoiding the problem of time and traffic and delay. It's there. You can try to put a line in, a separate lane for buses only. You're still going to have the accidents, the problems, the tie-ups, gas consumption, traffic. Like I said, it's in the back, it's over. That bus line, I don't even know why you waste your time with it. Because you still have to, once you get into the inner city, you still have to fight that traffic zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of your problem. If you can look into those possibilities, Middleborough line, is that possibly going to be for the Cape line in the future? If that you're looking into that project, if that tie-in, you could use that for future reference. You're improving the line for that project as well as the Fall River Stoughton line and New Bedford. Please look at all of it as a whole and stop pushing off this project. If you can't find the funds, I don't know why you're not pushing for a federal one. Federal subsidies, why not? You're doing it for Providence line, you're looking at now for Green Line and the maintenance, but we're still at the same point. We're kicking, debating, baiting, and switching. Here we are again. I'm getting ready to retire in 8 years. I was looking forward to a rail so I can get a job in Boston, keep my tax dollars in the state of Massachusetts. Instead, I'm working out of Rhode Island. I'm paying both taxes in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Why? Because you stun the economic growth in this city. Mm-hmm. You prevent it from going. Mm-hmm. And other politics, which I will not get into here, add to that problem. Please, continue endeavors. I understand the engineering problems and the delays, but it's getting monotonous to the point where the people ignore you. Because they're like, I sit in a commuter bus with people, and I talk. And they say, rail, not in your lifetime. I'll be lucky if I see it before I retire. And I just wanted to go back and forth from Boston, take my family, enjoy, be part of the tourism of my own state, and take my family, friends. I can't do that. Why? Traffic, time, money, the rail project. It's a pipe dream. Until we have a solid go point, it's all a pipe dream. Time delays continue.
You have lots of good points. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think Mayor Lang had his hand up, and then I'll come over here. We'll do a few more. It's getting on to 9 o'clock pretty soon.
So let me be a little more positive about this for a minute. Although I am going to debunk some of the things that were said. I have been involved with the rail for probably 20 years as a citizen, 6 years as the mayor of New Bedford. I think I understand the project pretty well. And about 10 years ago, I was told if you talk about anything other than the Stoughton line, we're never going to get the train. And I can tell you that I'm at a point now where I believe if we don't begin to talk about beginning to build a train, we're never going to get the train. So I want to explain some of the things very, very quickly, and some of the things that were said tonight that I respect everyone's opinion. I think everyone, though, should have an open mind. I think we should let DOT do the work that they're going to do. I have tremendous confidence in them. They will come back and not give us anything but not a bait and switch, but give us actually a practical way to begin riding steel rail in New Bedford, Freetown, Fall River, Taunton, and then over to Middleborough. And then if in fact it's possible to build the Stoughton line, I believe it will be built. But in the meantime, I believe we need to do phase one, which is through Middleborough. It's a 7.5-mile jog to the east, and it gets us to a line that cost several $1 billion that we help pay for and we're not on right now. So it's kind of giving us an entrance ramp into the Middleborough line. So some of the things I want to say just very quickly is we shouldn't be talking about litigation. I went up in north of Taunton 10 years ago and went to meetings, and I listened to people say, if you try and do this, we will sue you. And I said, don't worry, we're going to work all this out. We're not going to get involved in litigation, whether it's with people north of us or people to the or people in Dighton or Berkeley or Taunton. We're not going to get involved in litigation. If you know what I do, other than being a public servant for a time, I'm a litigator. We're not going to litigate over these lines. We're going to work it out. So that's number one. And anyone who gets up and starts talking about litigation, we've got to take a step back, sit down, and figure out exactly what that is all about. I want to protect Taunton. I know Taunton gets service that they will not get I expect they'll get it in all of our lifetime, including the fellow who was here before. But the fact of the matter is, you're talking about 16, at optimum time, 16 years before the Stoughton line gets rolling. And I think we can get this rolling much quicker. I think 3 to 5 years. Sounds like a Walpole sentence. I think we can do that standing on our head. That's number one. Number two, the Army Corps. I'm very familiar with the Army Corps. I agree with what Mike Roderick said. It's important, and I think the DO team has already approached them. But I think that somehow we have gotten waylaid, and in a sense, we've gotten a little bit into a little bit of a pickle here on this, because the Southern Triangle is completely discrete from when you get north of Taunton. And the reason that we ended up with electrification is because we were trying to get through the Hockomock Swamp, because there's no way in hell we ever would have agreed to electrification on a rail line and the cost of that when no one else in the state has it, and they're building rail lines all over the state right now, including the conversations right now are Worcester, by the way, which started with tremendously limited service. I was out there when they had 2 trains. They're now running about 20 trains, and I know their Chamber of Commerce tells us that the difference in the growth, as you said, Larry, in Worcester is due to the train. So we want to start with limited, and then once we get going, we'll get rolling. And then we'll be at the table with other communities that have the train. And it'll be extremely, extremely positive, good for everybody. But the fact of the matter is we need to sit down with the Army Corps and find out exactly what it means to fully permit out Stoughton, which may not be able to be fully permitted out, by the way. They've signed off on it. They've said it's the environmentally preferred route, but that's because it's electric. It's not because they said, hey, it's great, go through the swamp, right? So we need to sit down. I think the status quo is dead. I think the status quo is dead at the federal, state, and local level on an awful lot of issues. I think this is an example of it. We got to retool, think about this, and get this done. Right? There's social and economic justice, which the Committee for Social Justice was talking about. This is what it's all about. You got to move people. You got to get them off the highway, you got to do it inexpensively, and you got to be cost effective. What Kathy said is right on the button. You can't justify spending $3.4 billion without South Station, by the way, which they will resolve, without the logjam between Quincy Braintree, which they will resolve. You can't justify $3.4 billion unless you live in China or unless you're building, and as Trump says, China, okay, unless you are able to just print money. It can't be done per capita. It does not make any sense. If the money falls from the tree, great. In the meantime, let's get this moving. So, as far as the Lakeville station goes, that is a red herring. The Lakeville station, when we go up 24 right now, we see signs that say, ride the Cape Flyer. It goes from Boston down past Lakeville to Wareham. I hear it when I'm at the Gateman games. I hear the whistle blowing. It kills me. That was built while we were sitting here saying, when are we getting the trail? The train, rather. It goes from down through Buzzards Bay, and then it goes to Hyannis. So we don't need to relocate the Lakeville train. Lakeville Station, rather. What we need to do, we'll stop at Bridgewater State. We'll also stop at JFK, which is the Boston University. So we connect BCC, we connect UMass Dartmouth with Bridgewater State campus right there. You hop off the train, you're right there, and also UMass Boston. The other thing we'll do is stop in either Quincy or Braintree. And the reason we do that is because then we have access to the MBTA. So it's fantastic. This route through Stoughton is a suburban route. Suburban routes are great, right? But what the heck are we going to do with our people? We can get to 2 universities and get to the MBTA on the Middleborough line. It is a great line. If we have overcapacity, we will build Stoughton. It's great. If it's permitted, if they get the money, we'll build it. But in the meantime, what we want to do is get riding on a train. So you start down at Buzzards Bay, you start down at Hyannis, you work up. We'll never stop at Lakeville unless you go south by transferring on the line. And then if you go south, you can get to Cape Cod now. You can't get to Cape Cod on the Stoughton line, certainly at this point. And the fact of the matter is that once you go north and the trains are heading north, we will hopscotch. And there may be some transfers where we'll get a lot more service by way of transfer. Because we'll get up to Brockton, we'll hop on a train and go to Boston when they said you don't get a 9 o'clock train, but if you transfer in Boston, you got a 9 o'clock train. In Brockton, rather, to get to Boston, you have the 9 o'clock train. This can be done. The people in this room have the ability, if we said to them, we got a caucus room for you, come out here in a half hour and show us how we're going to do it. I know they know how to do it. I know they've already figured it out. I know it's just a matter of working through, sadly, the politics, and secondly, the money. This costs 1/10. When I was mayor, I had this priced out by train experts. They came back and said, you can do it for $200 million, but you still got to do the Wamsutta Bridge. We already did the Wamsutta Bridge through the feds. It's almost done. Last but not least, I just want to say this. We got to stick together on saying we want the train. There's no one in New Bedford who ever said to me, boy, you got to get me the Stoughton route, other than maybe some train wonks. Or some people who thought electrification is going to change the world, so let's go do it. Or someone said New Bedford and Fall River should sacrifice moving a train in the name of global warming or climate. The answer is, let's get on the train. If one day they electrify Middleborough, that's great. We're in the middle of it. If they get the money to build Stoughton, we're in the middle of it. But do not let this opportunity pass. 16 years from now, we'll be meeting again. I'll be a hologram, okay, up here speaking, but we'll be meeting again talking about wringing our hands off our wrists that a senator said, I'll sue you all. Let him sue. I'm ready to go. The fact is we need to get this moving. And if we don't get it moving, it is going to be gone. So that's my point of view on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, ma'am.
Buonasera, good evening. My name is Liliana Gagliardi. I lived in Fall River since 1965. I love Fall River. I left the beautiful country, Italy, and at the beginning I was kind of in a shock when I came to Fall River, but it grows on you. And I am very baffled by the thought that such a big country as America has such a terrible public transportation. I used to skip school because I had religion and calligraphy, and we used to go to Venice from my hometown in 40 minutes. Now you can go from Torino to Rome in 4 hours. It is just baffling. So my husband kept telling me, oh, but we had the train, you know, I used to go to the pharmacy school with the train, blah, 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 blah. But when I arrived, I couldn't drive because I I didn't do it in Italy. There was no need. And so I was stuck. Where am I going here? I'm in Fall River and I need to go to Boston to get my Italian grocery. What am I doing here? So waited, and then they made the promise. And they come when it's time to vote, and they come and they tell us the nice little story about the rail, but it never happened. So now, all of a sudden, we have to wait for the engineering from the Army. We have to wait for this permission, we have to wait for the other permission. I thought that Italy was bogged down in the bureaucracy, but this is insane. This is totally insane. I'm a certified travel agent, and I look at this in a different way. We have the most beautiful sunset in Fall River. I went to Greece, to the Sunion place to see the beautiful sunset there. And my husband said, "Is the same sun as in Fall River, Liliana?" And I say, yes, it is beautiful. We have beautiful Victorian homes that people are interested in. It's a historical society that is a jewel. Historical buildings that are unusual. And you have to think, I mean, I have a lot of relatives that come and visit, and I am so embarrassed when they say, "What train can I get to come to Fall River?" So I said, "We don't have a train. I'll come and get you." But he said, "No, it's too far. How about a bus?" Fine, there is a bus. But I had an exchange student that wanted to go, the last bus in Fall River to go back to Boston, because he was going to school to Boston, it's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're in the middle of after lunch. So I want you to make me proud. I want you to make me happy. I want you to make me feel like I'm home again. Please give us a train. We need it. We need it for our children, for our grandchildren, and we need it for the good of Fall River. I am tired of being dumped on from Boston. They send us their, I'm going to be politically incorrect, they are sending us their undesirable people from Dorchester over here because their rent are low. And then we have to come up with millions of dollars from transportation and education and all that. Enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is David Lalima. I live in Westport, and I have more of a question. I lived in Western Mass, and I often, for years, wondered why there was no train from Western Mass to Boston. And the simple solution to me seems like, and I'm not an engineer, I'm a lawyer, but it seems to me, why couldn't they put an elevated train along the Mass Turnpike from one end of the state to the other? And in the same vein, why in the world, I mean, I just listened to all this, it's overwhelming. In 2016, the technological, the environmental, the complexity of trying to put a train in 2016 from 1.60 miles south through all of this, you can see why it's taken 10, 15 years. Why in the world aren't we put an elevated train right down Route 24? I just don't understand that.
We looked at that.
I mean, it's just so logical after all of what we're doing.
It is not as easy as you think, and
Well,
we can refer you to the documents that show how hard it would be.
Well, it can't be any harder than what you're just describing through how many of these towns you're going to have to permit. It just doesn't seem, I mean, the rest of the world isn't doing this. It seems, I mean, I listen to this, it's overwhelming. I mean, no matter which option you pick, you are going to put years and years and zillions of dollars to make this happen. I mean, it's sort of frustrating and sad, and the reality is it probably won't happen for at least 10 years. I mean, with all due respect, I just thought, I might not be alive by the time this thing happens, but this region and the rest of the state needs public transportation, and the only place that has it is Boston. And that's a sad commentary on the rest of the Commonwealth, who all pays taxes, and this is what we get. But so realistically, you can't put an elevated train down here.
No, we did look at it, I assure you. And if you went online
Okay.
and looked at the, which one? Is it the alternatives analysis? There's an alternatives analysis, and it's there. Or you could email one of us and ask us where to find it.
I will, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm only let, 30 seconds. No, there's a gentleman in the back who hasn't spoken yet, and then it's going to be almost, it's after 9 o'clock. So we're going to have to wind it up. So would you like to be the closer?
I think I was the closer the other night at Taunton, too.
Oh, you have good timing
something
then.
was kind of going through my mind after I was thinking about that was a term, and I've been kind of trying to bring myself up to speed on a lot of the alternatives that have been considered. And I realized that every alternative involved routes, whether it's Stoughton Line, the Middleborough Line, the Attleboro Line, there's a couple others, the Mansfield right-of-way or former right-of-way, something like that. They all involve routes of a rail network that was designed and built in the 1800s.
Yes.
And now we're trying to put electrified rail service on an almost 200-year-old route. And the words that kept coming back to my mind were "back to the future." You just think about it. We're looking at, trying to rehabilitate lines that have been out of service for 50 years. And also, back in the history, Taunton was the center of the old colony. Mm-hmm. All the roads went right through Taunton. All the rail lines went right through Taunton. No wonder they're upset that they're being shut out of the rail service by the Middleborough option. One of the things, I think on the first note I had sent in, I suggested maybe they could still go from the Southern Triangle into Taunton to where the station is supposed to be located, then use the reverse motion from there to Middleborough, and then go forward again to Boston, that way of not having to relocate the Middleborough station as well, just as a way of, providing service. The other service that the other option that is also fairly inexpensive to create, and I brought up the last 2 times I've spoken, is the Attleboro secondary, or whatever they call it. Because I'm sure an equal number of people from the Fall River area commute to Providence as go to Boston. And I'm sure a lot of people from the Fall River, New Bedford area take flights out of T.F. Green Airport and go to maybe Providence to get on Amtrak to New York or D.C. And with just a 10-mile option, that's not much more to upgrade than the Middleborough option. Besides providing limited service via Middleborough to Boston, you can provide an additional service to Attleboro where they can connect with the service to Boston, but you can also continue the train on to Providence and T.F. Green. So now you're providing economic alternative for the area.
Yes, we have that suggestion. Thank you.
I just want to bring it up to the folks from the Fall River Chamber, might be, because everybody's not thinking, everybody's mentioning the other ones, but that's the one option that's never being considered.
Hey, if you can write a check, we'll take a serious look at it. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to thank everyone and wish you a lovely evening. There's been so much conversation about about not being around that I think 10 years from tonight we should all meet here again, and I'll pay for the party. I will remind you that this is our South Coast Rail website. You can email comments to us. You can pick up the address over at the sign-in table. I really appreciate your patience. This went a little bit long, but I assure you that every topic and comment that was brought up tonight will be shared with the secretary. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And also, I forgot to thank the Bristol Community College, which set up this facility, also hosted us in Taunton, provided everything. So it's a wonderful institution, and I again want to thank the university.